So let's talk about one of the modern wonders of the world, Japan's Kansai International Airport. I mean, look at this thing. It's an airport built on its own man-made island, right in the middle of a bay. But this incredible feat of engineering has a shocking secret. It was designed from the very beginning to sink.
Yeah, you heard that right. So, how do you save a drowning airport? It sounds like a total paradox, doesn't it? Why on earth would anyone spend billions of dollars on a piece of infrastructure that's actively sinking into the ocean? Well, the story behind it is just this incredible masterclass in how engineers tried to fight and, adapt to the unbelievable forces of nature.
And the scale of this problem? It became obvious almost immediately. Get this, within just a few months of the island's construction, it had already sunk 27 feet. Now, to put that into perspective for you, the engineer's most pessimistic worst-case scenario prediction was only 19 feet total for its entire lifetime. It was sinking way faster and way further than anyone ever imagined, and it just kept on going.
So, you gotta ask, how did they end up in this situation in the first place? To really get why they took this insane gamble, we need to rewind a bit and understand the problem that forced Japan to even consider building an airport in the middle of Osaka Bay.
This really lays out the impossible situation they were in. Their original airport, Itami, was just completely overwhelmed. It was boxed in on all sides by houses and neighborhoods, which meant, absolutely no room to expand. Plus, residents were constantly and understandably complaining about the jet noise. And in a country as dense as Japan, you can't just go out and buy up a bunch of land. It's just not there. So the only option left was the sea.
So they decided to do something that had never really been done on this scale before, build an entire island from scratch 3 whole miles from the shore. And that meant creating a stable, solid foundation right on top of a seriously treacherous, unstable seabed.
And here was the massive challenge. The seabed wasn't some nice, solid rock. Nope, it was this deep layer of soft, waterlogged clay. The engineers literally described it as having the consistency of a wet sponge. Just think about that. Building a massive airport on that meant it was absolutely guaranteed to sink. And even worse, it would sink unevenly for decades.
The solution they came up with was this brilliant piece of tech called sand drains. The whole goal was to squeeze all that water out of the clay sponge to make it more compact and strong. But of course, to get the water out, you first have to give it somewhere to go, an escape route.
And how it worked was, honestly, a simple but brilliant 3-step process. First, you apply an immense amount of weight. I mean immense. They used earth quarried from 3 entire mountains to build the island. Second, you squeeze. That colossal weight literally squeezes the water out of the clay below. And third, you drain and compact. The water then escapes up through millions of these sand columns they had drilled into the seabed, leaving a much stronger, denser foundation behind. Pretty clever, right? But then came the alarming discovery. The best engineers in the world, using all the data they had, predicted a total sinking of about 19 feet. But before the airport even opened its doors, the island had already plunged 27 feet. And it was still dropping 2 inches every single month. Their calculations hadn't just been off, they had been catastrophically wrong.
Well, as you can imagine, the news sent total shockwaves through Japan and the entire global engineering community. The media immediately branded the project the biggest engineering blunder in history. The whole thing was labeled a disaster, the president of the airport company actually resigned, and the world just watched as it looked like Japan's multi-billion-dollar bet was literally sinking into the ocean.
But hold on, this wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. Because the engineers hadn't just planned for the island to sink, they had a secret weapon built right into the terminal itself.
The big problem now was uneven sinking. See, different parts of this massive island were settling at different rates. And for a building that's over a mile long, that's basically a death sentence. The stress would twist it, crack it, and eventually just tear the entire structure to pieces.
Okay, this is where the real genius comes in. The entire terminal building sits on 900 pillars, and get this, every single one is adjustable. You've got sensors constantly monitoring the height of each pillar. If one sinks just a little too low, powerful hydraulic jacks lift that entire section of the building up. Then workers just slide these thick steel plates underneath to lock it into its new, perfectly level position. They could literally jack up the entire airport piece by piece whenever they needed to. Incredible. But this brilliant solution created another, completely bizarre problem. The architect had designed a super lightweight terminal specifically to reduce sinking. Well, it worked a little too well. The building was now sinking much slower than the island it was sitting on.
If this kept up, the airport's foundations would eventually be sticking out of the ground. Can you imagine?
So the solution was almost comically simple. If the building is too light, well, you just add more weight. They literally piled a thick layer of iron ore into the foundation, balancing the load perfectly so the terminal and the island would finally sink together in harmony.
Then, in 1995, just a year after opening, this revolutionary airport would face its ultimate test, a catastrophic natural disaster that would absolutely devastate the entire region.
We're talking about the Great Hanshin earthquake, a magnitude 7.3 quake that leveled cities and tragically killed thousands of people. And the airport, sitting on its wet sponge foundation just a few miles from the epicenter, was directly in its path.
The result was just astonishing. The terminal suffered no major structural damage at all. Not a single pane of glass in that massive building shattered. As roads and ports all across the region lay in ruins, the airport and its access bridge remained completely open. It became a vital lifeline for disaster relief, and in that moment, it proved the fundamental genius of its design.
You know, surviving a catastrophic earthquake should be the happy ending to this story. But it isn't. Because that original problem, it never actually went away. The airport is still sinking, locked in this constant, slow-motion race against the sea.
So here's where things stand today. The sinking has slowed down, for sure, but it hasn't stopped. The original island, Island 1, sinks about 6 centimeters every year. A second, newer island they built nearby sinks even faster, a whopping 21 centimeters a year. One study from a few years back projected a pretty stark future. The original island could be at sea level by 2067, maybe even sooner. Now, while that exact date is debated, the threat is very, very real. Which leaves us with the ultimate question, right? Is Kansai Airport a stunning triumph of human ingenuity, a marvel that can adapt to any challenge thrown its way, or is it a massive cautionary tale, a costly, endless battle against nature that maybe we can never truly win?